Topsy-Turvy. The engines on the island of Sodor are good at different things. Henry is good at pulling freight trains and the flying kipper. Percy is good at carrying the mail train. James is good at handling goods and passenger trains. And Edward is good at hauling trucks and being the back engine. One morning the engines were resting in the shed. "I do love doing my own jobs," said Henry, "but for once I wish I could do something different." "I would like to do something new too," agreed Percy. "But I am good at pulling the mail train." "Sometimes I get to do all the jobs," said James. "Mixed traffic engines like me can always do its best to be useful." Then Edward had an idea. "What if we tried to be each other?" he suggested. "That way we can all try and do different jobs." "That's a great idea," said Percy. "I'll be Henry, I'll be Edward, I'll be James, and I'll be Percy." The next morning the engines went off to work. Edward came to Knapford Station, and as he was being James for the day, he asked the station master what James's jobs are meant to be today. "James has got a goods trains to collect from the docks," said the station master, "and then he's got to collect his coaches." "That doesn't sound too hard," thought Edward, "and I think it should be great fun being James." Meanwhile, James was pulling Percy's mail train. "Pulling the mail train is quite an easy job," said James, "and no wonder why that job has been given to a small engine like him," and he hurried along the main line. Henry's first job, as he was being Edward for the day, was to arrange some trucks on the siding. "This doesn't seem too bad at all," he thought to himself, "and I know how to handle trucks just as well as Edward." But Percy, on the other hand, was not having fun being Henry at all. He was pulling a very long train, and the trucks were too heavy for him to pull. "Now I know why Henry pulls trains like this," Percy said sadly. "It's too heavy for me, and I'm not as strong as him." Back at the yards, Henry was resting on the siding. Just then Edward arrived with James's coaches. "How are you finding being me?" asked Edward. "It's quite easy, thank you," replied Henry. "That's good," said Edward. "James is handling the mail train very well, and I think it's great fun being James." "But what about Percy?" asked Henry. "He's been me for the day, and I haven't seen him since this morning." "I'm sure he'll be fine wherever he is," said Edward as he puffed away with the coaches. But Henry wasn't sure. Maybe Percy was struggling with his train, and he's not as strong as Henry. "I might have to go and check on him," thought Henry, and then he set off to find Percy. Percy was at the old iron bridge, feeling miserable. Just then James arrived. "How are you managing the mail train?" Percy asked James. "It's not too bad, thank you," replied James. "I see you're not managing Henry's train." "No, I'm not," said Percy. "They are too heavy." Henry arrived and saw Percy looking sad. "Don't worry, Percy," said Henry. "As I'm being Edward, I can be your back engine," and he buffered up to his train. Just then they heard a whistle. Thomas was crossing the bridge when he saw James, Percy and Henry. He was very surprised to see them doing different jobs. "James," said Thomas, "the mail train is a job for Percy. Percy, this train is too heavy for a small engine like you. And Henry, what are you doing being a back engine with your own train? The back engine is a job for Edward." Then Edward arrived. "Edward," said Thomas, "you're supposed to be at the station arranging trucks. What has been going on today? You seem to be doing different jobs instead of your own. I shall have to go and report this to the Fat Controller." Later, the Fat Controller sent for James, Edward, Percy and Henry. He was very cross. "I've been hearing from Thomas that all you four have been causing confusion and delay," he said sternly. "Explain yourselves." "It was our idea to be each other, sir," said Henry. "I was being Edward, Edward was being James, James was being Percy, and Percy was being me. And we're all doing different each other's jobs," said James. "But some of us handled it better than others," said Edward. "I tried to pull Henry's train," said Percy, "but it was too heavy for me." The Fat Controller understood. "You're all good at different things," he said. "That's why I gave you those jobs. Tomorrow you'll go back to your normal jobs, and you will keep them from now on. Remember how good it is to be you." The next day They went back to their normal jobs and they found out that the Fat Controller was right. They were good at their normal jobs. Percy pulled the mail train, Henry pulled his goods train, Edward went back to being the back engine, and as for James, well, he was just glad to be himself again.